back in their seats. So
Okay, so let's go ahead and get back to our seats. We're going to gather round for the second half of our change at a doorstep. I'm going to do the rats. Okay, let's take our seats so we can get started on the second half of our program. Hey Pam, are you an instructional specialist? Okay. Through 5th, kindergarten, K through 5. And then do you do this for How about a nice round of applause for our scientists in the back there? Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Pamela Garcia, who was once a 4th to 5th grade teacher at Oakville Elementary School. Pamela is now really an instructional specialist, and she helps elementary school teachers with their teaching methodology and their teaching skills. And I'm delighted for her to come and speak to us today. Please reserve your questions until after her presentation. Pamela?
Hi, I've had about 20 years experience in the classroom, working mostly with elementary school children. I've also spent 6 of my summers taking kids outside, hiking through Outdoor Explorers Discovery Southeast summer hiking program, and so that was very fun. I've also, the last few summers, I've created some trails for Gold Belt Corporation for their Early Scholars summer program. So I'm here today to share with you some of my experiences with getting kids outside. I know you've been attending all these incredible sessions, learning about climate change and temperate rainforests and all these exciting scientific topics, but I'm here really to talk about the importance of creating a window for young people to reconnect with their environment, because we want them to get interested in the place that they live, so later on they'll want to pursue higher level studies in about their world and be our future stewards. So recently, I've also was asked to contribute to the Alaska Environmental Literacy Plan, and their definition of environmental literacy is to have a personal connection with nature and appreciation of the local environment through engaging in outdoor activities on a regular basis. So some tried and true activities I've done in the classroom with kids is, and actually outside of the classroom, is opening inquiry, nature journals, scavenger hunts, and structured and some unstructured walks and hikes. And like I said before, I've done this with, K through 12 students. So opening inquiry is an opening activity once you get kids outside. One of the first steps is to get kids to be observers. and to just really pay attention to their environment. Oftentimes when we get kids outside, they're just, wow, we're outside, yay, outside, outside this, and they just want to run around and pick up sticks and throw them and throw rocks and all that fun stuff that kids do. So sometimes it's nice to have a focusing activity just to get kids to just slow down and pay attention. So here's one that I like to do. So I'm going to have you stand up and do this. This is just, I'll do a truncated version of it. So everybody stand up. So it's all about being quiet and just using your senses to observe. So you just, and I'll have kids like in a circle. So I'll just say, okay. So for 30 seconds, you're just going to look in the direction where you're standing, and you're just going to listen and look and feel. And so we're going to do that. But I'm going to do a shorter version. Okay, so now 30 seconds are up. Okay, now turn to the right 1/4 and go and look towards another direction. Okay, turn to the right another direction. And one last 1/4 turn. Okay, and then return to the position where you're at. And so then after this activity, I have each student one by one share an I wonder question. So it's pretty amazing because the kids now have had an opportunity to really look at things that they might not have noticed before when they were just running through the woods, crashing through the forest. So now they're asking questions like, I wonder why there's so much moss on that tree. I wonder who lives here. Who made that hole? Who was gnawing on the branch? What's the name of that bird that I heard singing? Why aren't there so many blueberry bushes on this side? And so it's just, and there doesn't necessarily have to be any answers to their I wonders, but each student gets a chance to wonder. And it's just a really nice opening activity to build those observation skills and inquiry. You may sit down. So another one of my favorite activities that I shared for the Alaska Environmental Literacy Plan is nature journaling. So go ahead and close your eyes right now. Do you have any special spots where you just sit and look and listen and feel? Imagine sitting in the woods in a place you have chosen, where all you do is just pay attention for a short while to all that's around you. How else would anyone ever know about the leaf pattern on a blueberry bush? Or how the creek water pushes the snow off the bank? Or how there are so many different kinds of plants growing in a square-foot area? Not many of my students ever did know until they got the chance to just sit and observe and just be in nature. At first, it was challenging to get them to this quiet spot within themselves, as their youthful energy wanted to run through the open space. But after a while, they were able to sit quietly. These young students of mine even became excellent at sketching and journaling their observations of nature. Not only that, they wondered, made connections, and developed a sense of caring for their natural world. Thanks. So I'm going to show you some examples of some nature journals. Here's one. I love this sketch. This is when I taught 1st and 2nd grade. I did that for several years. How come the skunk cabbage is rotting away when it's spring? The skunk cabbage is really good at standing still. I love that one. I think the reason they're by the creek is they need water. So really observant. Here's another one. I like the arrows. Hemlock. I like this tree because it is spiny and it's soft moss. This tree is very scruffily. Like, I notice it has a deer rubbing on it. It has all these roots coming from it. From the distance, the playground, it seems like and sounds like a horror movie from here. And that's funny, but it's also very like, okay, once you're out of the playground and you're in the woods, you recognize the importance of silence and how horrifying all that noise can be. So just getting kids out where they can just quiet down and listen and look can be really calming for them. Here's another one. It smells really piney and nature smelling. It is really a great sunny, shiny day, and there's skunk cabbage everywhere. There's also sticks and rocks and trees and moss. I love nature, Miss Curie. That was my name before. You got to love it. There is a thing on the tree where there is no bark at all. How cool is that? I think it is totally cool. Look at it. It is so neat. It is all swirly. The twigs are all sticky and wiggly. So I just love this because we want kids to notice. We want them to love. We want to honor their silence and really value that importance of slowing down and using our multiple senses to make the connections to the place that we live. And if we go time and time again, they get to know a place over time. And that really gets them even more connected. Because if we're not connected to the place we live, then why are we going to care about it? So we want to have those experiences for kids. And they have those memories. Like when I see my kids later on, I bump into them later on in the community, they'll remember these experiences. They'll talk about it. So another basic simple activity is just having scavenger hunts, but it's basic, but it's important because once again, it's another way to get kids to focus and really pay attention to their environment. So you get to have them to look for things. And sometimes this is where they finally notice, wow, there are so many different kinds of leaves, so many different kinds of grass. Look at all these rocks, pretty colors. And they notice animal tracks or rubbings or different berries that maybe they hadn't noticed before. So I'm just going to keep saying this, get to know and love your backyard. Another thing I'd like to do is hiking up on trails, and time again, every year before I'd get ready to take my class out on the trail, I'd ask them, okay, who's ever been up to Spalding Meadows? Who's ever been to Mount Roberts? And sadly, the majority of my students had never gone there. And this is their backyard. They live here. It doesn't cost money to go there. And so that just confirmed to me that what I was doing with my students was really important. You know, if they have this experience a few times a year in 5th grade, 4th grade, whatever grade they are to get outside, then that's better than what they've been doing. So I was just always pleased to take them out there. So one of the things when I think about when I take out my students is sometimes I think of a theme. So, okay, we're going to go out. So maybe we'll be talking about habitats. Maybe we'll be talking about biodiversity. Maybe I'll have my kids notice the difference between alpine, subalpine, and forest and habitat. So it's just something where I think of questions ahead of time and experiences where they can pay attention to where they are and learn something from that experience. I've also done more structured trail activities. Like I said, I'd created some stuff for Gold Belt Corporation where kids had like a trifold or a bifold, and they were going to certain waypoints using GPS. They'd go to certain waypoints, and once they got there, they'd have a question that they would answer or something that I'd want them to observe. And that really got them to focus in on their area. So some questions could be, how old do you think this forest is here on the lower trail? Do you think it was here before the trail was built or after? Look for evidence along the trail to support your hypothesis. Do you see stumps? Are they windfall or cut by humans? What do you see or not see that supports your thinking? So just depending on the trail, you can just think of questions that will open up the thinking for the students. So here's my question. Who will be our future stewards? So now's the time. If I can make a difference for just a few people today, young students I get out, maybe they'll be the future stewards. Maybe they'll be our future artists, like we see beautiful art here, our future scientists, musicians, politicians, conservationists, naturalists. Could be an educator. Those are our future stewards, people who are connected. And lastly, I also want to emphasize the importance of us as being enthusiastic role models. It's as an instructor, I'm on my last few slides. My connection to a place has to be established so that I can inspire my students to connect to the place where I live. So if I love where I live and I'm connected to where I live, then I will be the inspiration for my students. I'll motivate them. There's a big difference between students from different classrooms depending on their teacher. You know, some kids complain when they have to go out on a field trip. While you go in other classrooms and they're all revved up because it depends on their mentor, their coach, their someone to inspire them that it's awesome out there even if it's raining or muddy. It's not so much what I say, but what I feel like around them. So if you're out there with your kids and you love it, they're going to love that. They're going to feel that, and they're going to love it. It's my sense of wonder and enthusiasm. I have just a couple of stories. So one time I had a group of fifth graders up Spalding Meadows, and we got up there, and one of my fifth grade girls, she was so stoked. She saw this, it was a hot day, and she just threw herself into a muskeg pond, and we call her Mud Girl. And it was just so awesome because she just had her whole body in there, and she just loved it. And then I had another boy from another class years that we were out somewhere in another trail, Mount Roberts or something. He's like, Miss Garcia, it's just so beautiful here. I just love nature. Thank you so much for taking us out here. And so I'll just leave you with that. Get outside and love where you live, and you'll care about it and to want to take care of where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. That was wonderful. I'm so impressed by all the different things that the Alaska Literacy Project has connected me with, and I really appreciate the connection with you. Thank you. So next we're going to have Clay Good, whose career has spanned high school oceanography to private consulting and education. Again, please reserve your questions after the presentation. And Clay Good.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here. Good to hear everybody talking about such good stuff, talking about place. Nice to hear Pamela talking about getting students outside. Good to be hanging out with my former colleague, Hank Hopkins, and just to tell you a little bit about some of the good things I enjoyed as a teacher in Juneau. My name is Clay Good. You can call me Lucky for a lot of reasons. The reason started, I think, largely in 1967. In 1967, my parents had the wisdom to bring us up here, our family. I was just a wee lad. In 1967, Betty Doherty started teaching oceanography at Juneau High School. And after her was Chuck Giraz, high school science teacher, when I was in high school. I didn't have him, but he was a pretty amazing guy. He wrote some of the first papers on bubble net feeding of whales and the fact that they travel between Hawaii and Alaska. This is a high school oceanography teacher. after Chuck Giroz, I had my turn at the helm teaching oceanography at Juneau Douglas High School until 2007 when I retired. And Hank took over my room, room 302. That's the view out the window of room 302 right there. Give you an idea of how hard it was to stay in the classroom sometimes. And to be a science teacher in Juneau, Alaska, to teach oceanography in Juneau, Alaska, is to be lucky. To have as your responsibility the importance of teaching students about the ocean, and when it's right outside the window, a stone's throw away, and that's your view every day, and you have the privilege of working with students every day. It makes you lucky, and I always felt lucky that way. Oceanography was an amazing subject to teach. It's such an integrated science. We've been learning all about in this conference about the integrated sciences and how important it is to not study them in isolation, but to bring them all together. And oceanography for me was that integration, the study of chemistry and physics and ecology and all of the ologies all kind of come together in the study of oceanography, as well as primarily in a number of cases the study of climate as it pertains to atmospheric and oceanographic systems. So that's an important reason why I feel lucky and why a lot of folks call me lucky. I also feel lucky because having grown up in Juneau, I have a sense of place here and the glimmer of an appreciation of what it must be like to be from this place. I am not from this place, but I have a hint of what that's like now. But I've grown fascinated by the importance of place, to belong to a place, to be connected to that place, even from like the molecular level, the molecules that make us up, to the stories that are told by Tlingit elders and by geoscientists, all focusing on this place. How was I to know as a kid growing up in Juneau that Juneau would be such an important place? It's just the place where the folks took us. You know, it's where we grew up and went to school and did what you had to do as a kid. I had no concept of how important this place is. And so I feel very lucky to be a part of this place. Let me see if I can figure out how to use a PC. Maybe not. Scroll here.
Okay, what do you want to do? Scroll down. Oh, I don't even know how to use it.
Oh, there's the view while you got it. Room 302.
Okay, you want to scroll down?
There we go.
So you
I
push
had it
this
going
one.
earlier.
Yeah,
This one here?
that one's yeah.
Okay, that's the go button. Good. So when it came to teaching climate science and climate change to my students in oceanography, to me it was about location. Location, location. To be in Juneau, because of its geographic location, you can see the little yellow pin there. Juneau is right at the edge of the ice field, and what would make a better place to study climate change than on the edge of an ice field at this latitude? So location was a big part of why climate change and the study of those integrated sciences fit into my classroom. Also because of Juneau's position as the political seat of our state. And because of that, there are scientists everywhere. There are scientific institutions everywhere. So part of getting out of the classroom for me wasn't just going out down to the docks, but it was also taking advantage of the fact that there are so many scientists in this community. I mean, you're tripping over them. You have to kick them out of your way on the sidewalk. They've all come here. This is the nexus. And they're coming here to study all kinds of stuff. But invariably, no matter what they're studying, some portion of it seems to relate to our changing climate. Those of us who've been here any number of years, we've all seen the glacier recede. But if you've been here long enough to get geyser status, you've also noticed that not only is the glacier receding, but you can see that it's receding faster than it used to. You don't have to be much of a geyser to see those differences. So for me, my good fortune, my good luck was partly just the accident of me being here, where we could go to the NOAA facilities here, the Ted Stevens Marine Research Institute, which is new. And before that, we would take students to the Auk Bay Lab. which is still got some great facilities there. Or how about the University of Alaska Fairbanks School of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences? So many resources there to help my students learn. Then how about the Juneau Icefield Research Program? That's been going on since the 40s. You see them out there in the parade every year. All those folks that come to Juneau to study how the climate's changing and how it shows up in our glaciers. Resources everywhere, scientists everywhere. At the University of Alaska Southeast, taking my students to the Coast Guard, search and rescue facilities right here in downtown Juneau. How about all of our good friends and neighbors at the Alaska Department in Fish and Game who are willing to help out with the Bio Blitz or come into the classrooms and teach what's happening here in our backyard, as Pam so importantly pointed out. I was also thinking while Pamela was talking about all the wonderful students that she took outside in her years of teaching and how they would grow up and come into our classrooms in the high school and carry that same passion and help be the leaders as we headed out into the classroom. They knew how to do inquiry outside and how to be thoughtful and how to listen. So thanks for that, Pamela. I appreciate it. National Marine Fisheries Service. They're certainly doing a lot of science around here and making themselves available to all of my students. By the way, this is just a little blog I threw together last night. I'm doing blogging these days, teaching teachers across the state. I write a blog a week, they read it, and they write back to me. And so I'm kind of comfortable using blogs anymore. So if you want to access any of these resources or see what I'm talking about, you can go to this blog I put together. I'll run back up to the top here real quick. It's placebookblog.blogspot.com. And I put this blog together a couple of years ago working at an Alaska Native Culture Camp, and where we talked about science and change and adaptation and resilience and place. And this is a picture that I took from high up in a tree behind the totem there. And when we were thinking about this whole camp, we thought, what would Raven see? How would Raven look upon this in our learning? What is Raven's perspective using the intelligence of Raven? And I thought, well, I want to get a picture of what it looks like from the Raven's point of view, so I took that picture. So yeah, all these scientists everywhere, so many scientists. How can I put these scientists to good work and get them out of their desks? And of course, that premier research institution, Juneau Douglas High School, my alma mater, although I'm pretty sure they gave me a courtesy diploma just to move me along. Little did they know I'd be back. But while I was at Juneau Douglas High School in 1998, some crazy folks came up with the National Ocean Sciences Bowl Alaska region competition. And of the 14 years we've been doing it, Juneau has won the competition 11 times. And 2 of those times we didn't win, we didn't go to the competition. So it's not just me, it's also my colleague Ben Carney who coaches it to this day. And so the question for me was, why is it that kids in Juneau do such a good job studying science and winning this competition? They have to write a 20-page paper, present it in front of a panel of scientists. All the students across the state have access to information through the internet and through other resources. But here in Juneau, we had scientists everywhere willing to engage and work with students to help them understand the big questions of science. And I'm convinced it's because of that personal interaction with the scientific community of Juneau that the students in Juneau have always done so well. And regarding climate change, here's just a quick list of some of the topics that have been covered throughout the years. And you can imagine looking at them, how many of them either are exactly about climate change or relate to climate change. You know, from thinning Arctic ice to ocean acidification, ecosystem-based management, climate change. So many of these relate to the issues of climate change and carbon dioxide in our environment. And naturally, our students who have written all these papers here, to hit any of these links here, will take you right to the paper they wrote. We'll just do this one here. A group of students who wrote a 20-page paper, won the competition, went to the nationals, and you don't have to scroll very far before you run into some kind of discussion about climate. So if you're going to do any kind of research about the ecosystem or resources that make Alaska so rich, make Juneau, this region, so rich, you're going to run into topics of climate change. Some other success stories in the world of studying climate with students has included working with the Juneau Juneau Economic Development Council and UAS, taking students to Glacier Bay in the summers, native culture camps through the Gold Belt Heritage Foundation or Institute, working with my fine friends at Discovery Southeast, taking kids out in the woods. Here's a course I've written called Native and Western Perspectives on Earth Systems. It's a blog, and it was about integrating Native ways of knowing with Western science to see how they overlap, and this Venn diagram here illustrates that. And the last little resource I want to turn you on to here before I walk out the door is this collection of resources here called Teacher's Domain. These are free resources that you can use in the classroom, lots of video snippets, including a very nice video snippet about Dolly Garza that I have included in that course and her work. And it's a great collection about Alaska Natives and their perspectives on climate change and their work with Western scientists to try to unravel what's happening to our climate here in Alaska. And some final resources for your consideration. If you like visuals for your presentations, let me recommend this Information is Beautiful website. Another wonderful website by Chris Jordan. These are amazing interactive visual places that have lots of information that you might find useful in a lot of different ways. And I'll leave you with a picture of my sister. Thank you very much.
Questions for Clay? Questions for Pamela? I neglected to ask. There you go. Any questions? Thank you very much, Clay. That was great. I was interested in creating a balance and looking at perspectives that different educators would bring. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is the concluding success story for this section. And it's a real partial success story. Oh, that's important. There you go. It seems pretty clear to me that an understanding of climate change at your doorstep takes a community. I think that really rings true from your presentation. A community that approaches learning with an open heart and an open mind. Hopefully the voices you've heard today have been able to throw this learning process into relief. Perceptions of change and how it occurs and where to find it is as varied as the colors of a king salmon's profile and as complex as a carbon footprint. It begins with providing space for kids, youth, adults to be able to observe. It starts with quiet time. I'm painting a picture here that is incomplete. Okay, now I'm going to learn how to use the PowerPoint without my pointer. Huh? Spacebar. Excellent. I'm going to share with you 3 operating programs that are very successful. One is about the empowerment of youth and educators. The second is a method to share both ideas. And the last is an opportunity for involvement and a challenge. There's a powerful youth involvement mechanism at work on the Tongass National Forest. Through our designation as a children's forest last year, we have created an umbrella organization that recognizes the importance of youth being involved with formulating solutions that affect public resources. Here you see the Youth Academy in Kasan, working on restoring a stream crossing on Prince of Wales Island. Children's Forest is, I repeat, not a funding program. It provides opportunities for youth to get to know their public resources more personally and to make choices about what is significant and important to them. In this case, a totem raising in their village. Some of the things that Children's Forest has created is a Forest of Words art exhibit. This by English as a second language speakers, where they translated their words into English and they communicated through both art, as you see the composite tree, and also words. This was a show in Ketchikan that recently closed. We probably had 400 people at the opening. There is also a virtual art show that we can share with everybody. This one was called Palabras del Bosque. Here's another piece of the art show. Adult artists created the cedar trees out of metal that form the top part of the wall. The bottom part of the wall are two different art classes taking a closer look at the woods around them, either by examining moss or going out in the woods and spending contemplative time before they wrote words about what they saw, what pleased them and what they cared about in their woods. Going out and checking out what's under the rocks is a big part of our science days, our fishing appreciation, and about going out to do stream team. This is an example of stream team at work. You notice they're using ice containers to divide up the various creatures that they found in their sample, and then they return their sample to the stream. A lot of this is done in the early spring. And information about Stream Team and others can be found in the next piece that I'm going to tell you about. Here's Karen Mayer doing Backyard Glacier with a group out in the Dredge Lakes area. Jim Case working with Girl Scouts. The next program I'm going to talk about is a communication process. It focuses in on longitudinal studies of change and is an electronic web page called Hands on the Land, www.handsontheland.com. If you examine this website closely, you can see that it allows educators and students to communicate around the country about their fieldwork being conducted on public lands. Alaska has 3 different nodes on this website. The Tongass National Forest location is one of them. There is no charge for accessing the site. The teachers can gain access through their classes and are free to do so. Resources and electronic field trips, including one called America's Rainforests, comparing the temperate rainforest and the tropical rainforest, is also available through Hands on the Land. Imagine, if you will, the ability to monitor and check in with applied science, climate science methods across vast distances in minutes, to present illustrations of change amongst artists in different ecosystems, and sharing stories across cultures. Hands on the Land makes this possible. The last thing I'd like to talk about is what Richard Louv addressed in his famous books about nature deficit disorder, and that was that youth do not have enough opportunities to go outdoors. Here are some Girl Scouts testing their annual snowpack in Petersburg. Kids don't have enough chance to embed with the things that are outside the classroom. And this really, really is important to young children in particular. Here, a group from Angoon. One of the things that Louv pointed out in his initial volumes and has been literally branded now, the unplugged generation, is the idea that youth need to have opportunities to interface with nature in a direct way. And it's increasingly difficult for youth to feel like they belong to any place because they are so attached to many places simultaneously. And so the importance of place-based learning comes to the fore. If you have an unplugged learning environment, children are more deeply involved with nature and community. Here they're learning about leave no trace techniques on Prince of Wales Island. There is also a prominent place for the expressive arts. These Girl Scouts are learning about tracking and how to identify tracks in the woods. Gives children an explicit opportunity to develop and ready themselves for being able to study technology explicitly without having to depend on it. Give children a time and a place to look inward. A quiet time, as Pam mentioned. These activities depend heavily on specific children, educators, parents, geography, culture, and community. And this is the unplugged aspect of the learning that I wanted to share with you. You know, it's really important so that kids can start to look at a learning environment that includes not only schools, but their daily life. And the unplugged aspect is in a dedication to showing young people and having them evolve as dignified members of an increasingly mediated and fragile world. I'm really sincere when I mean that they need to cool down with their infatuation with technology. It's great, but they need to heat up for a concern for those we live with and the earth that we live on. Thanks very much. So now we're going to transition to Dave Cleaves, who's the Climate Change Advisor for the U.S. Forest Service. He'll be joining us from Washington, D.C. He's been watching our presentations this afternoon, and please join us, Dave Cleaves.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I don't know, really, I'm kind of starting out in kind of a curious spot. I'm in Washington and I'm watching you. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Outside my door, or out my window right here, is the Washington Monument. And as we've talked about places, I would like to be with you in your place, but I'm here in my place as the planes come into National Airport here across the Washington Monument, and the last tourist is trying to find the last cherry blossom that left probably 3 weeks ago, but he keeps looking outside here. So every place has its combination of things. I really appreciate you asking me to be a part of this. Let me congratulate the organizers of this conference and the Coastal Forest Rainforest Center and the partners, Alaska Coastal Rainforest Center and the partners. I think they've shown what collaboration can do to bring the right people together on the right topic at the right time. And we need to do more and more of this kind of collaborative learning and engagement all over the country. So you're setting a great example there. I think also let me congratulate you on putting education as a component of the total symposium. We certainly can't leave it out. Often we think about it last instead of first. And if we're going to deal with change in a very productive way, that's going to depend on our ability to educate ourselves and educate our youth to deal with that change. And you in Alaska there have been dealing with the impacts of climate change for some time in a very concrete way. Those of us in other parts of the country now are beginning to feel and to see the changes, moving from kind of an abstract and forecasted notion of climate change to a real notion of climate change. So you really are pioneers. You're leading the way for a lot of other folks in the rest of the country here. So I congratulate you on your efforts. and it hits close to home for me. My daughter will be graduating in early childhood education from Towson University in Baltimore just in a few weeks, and she's been the last 2 days has had her youth on a field trip at the Chesapeake Bay. So they've been unplugged, but when she gets back home at night, she plugs in and tweets us all the gory details about every squeal and scream that she had that day when they went into the net and held all those wriggly critters. But she would love to be there with you, I'm sure. So anyway, what I'd like to do today, I took some notes as as the session went on here, and I'd like to, and I've put them in a little PowerPoint here for you to take a look at, and I'll be happy to send that to the organizers if you want to see it later. But it really exposed me here. This was a lot of fun. It's about going on 8 o'clock here in DC, and believe me, this is way better than Dancing with the Stars. And this was a good session for me tonight here. The office is quiet. All the activity is out there with you, and I was able to absorb that. So if I can get plugged in just for a moment here, I'm going to put on this presentation and see what happens here, because I'd like to try to pull together some of the things that I learned from listening to you. I don't know, can you see that presentation? I don't know, can you see that presentation? Can you see that presentation? Well, that's not the presentation. That's, what do we see there? What? Well, that's not the presentation. That's, what do we see there? Us? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, you look marvelous. Us? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, you look marvelous. Oh, I see. Okay. Is this, how's that? Can you see that? All right, I see. Well, either you can see it or somebody's serving cocktails early there. So anyway, let me just and forgive the problems here. I'm not a very good PowerPoint chef here, but just as I listen to you talk, these are the things that I learned. Let me advance this here. These are the things that I learned. Let me advance this here. Okay. Yeah, you got it? The live feed. Okay. Yeah, you got it? Okay. The live feed. How's that? Does that work? Okay. See, I am teachable. I am teachable. Okay. But anyway, what you taught me this evening, and these are lessons that we all need to learn. Number one is that these great presentations by the Environmental Youth Leadership Team and the Juneau School District teachers really are that students are teachers and scientists and leaders too. This notion of a future stewards, they are stewards right in amongst us right now. And what I saw in that very first presentation was youth actually acting as teachers and scientists and leaders themselves. And it really gave me a lot of optimism about the future of dealing with all of the changes that we'll be dealing with, climate and other global changes. Secondly is that engagement is the key to learning. And we all knew that, but you gave us some great examples of that in the Juneau School District and the Forest Service example, for example, and that we can't forget that. It's not about the books. It's not just about the books. It's not just about the graphs and the charts. It's about getting in there and feeling and doing and learning, and that science and change both come to life in stories. And that we have to relearn that every day in Washington, D.C. We think that somehow if we just get the technology and the science out there, that that is enough to make change, and that's not the case. People relate to and remember and feel stories, and you have to put the science into the stories, and so that people can remember and relate to them. So the haunting question here that came out of this session, these sessions actually, were, what will our story be? We have the opportunity to tell and write our story as we move through change, and it will be a very effective one if we do it correctly. And then if pictures carry the story, now I wish I could have been there to look at the Ketchikan School of Arts and the community charter schools exhibits and posters, but maybe I can get somebody with a with a cell phone and a camera or whatever to plug me in, so to speak, and show me what those look like. But pictures and stories together are powerful combinations. So let me change this. Okay, what I also learned was that if we're going to learn so that we can deal with change, we have to use and celebrate and use together a diversity of different kinds of knowledge. We have a tendency in research to worship the scientific method and scientific knowledge, but we know full well, and you've shown us that it's science, experience, and traditional knowledge that was so well illustrated in that first presentation. They have to be used together. It gives us different ways of seeing change and different ways of dealing with it. Multiple perspectives gives us more options for dealing with change. And that secondly, we have to rely on our thinking skills. The skills that you educators are helping us develop will give us those kind of basic navigational aids to allow us to work out over some waters that we've never seen before. Climate change is bringing us reorganizing things in ways that we haven't seen in the past, but if we have thinking skills that we bring to bear and diverse knowledge to the task, we can deal with it. The other thing I observed here was the importance of resources for education, resources of all different kinds. And resources in education are really an investment in working with change. If we don't invest in those resources that I saw you folks using, we can't hope to deal with climate or any other kinds of change. And that those resources have to be where, those resources have to be where the change presents itself and where it shows up. In other words, they've got to be place-based, and they have to be able to capture and incorporate culture. If there's one issue that gives me the most fits about climate change and dealing with climate change, is that it's very heavy. The science is very, very heavy to the ecological responses. But at the same time, there are economic, cultural, social, demographic, and other elements to these responses that we really need to deal with, and it can't be kind of out of balance like that. And we can find these resources in our own forest, like the Heen-Latini experimental forest, in our own backyards, as Pam was telling us. The resources are there for learning, and they're long-lasting, and there are multiple benefactors of these resources. So as we kind of fight to the investment process for for attention and dollars and energy for educational resources, let's remember that there are multiple benefactors, as you pointed out, and that we are, and what I also saw was that we are learning resources for each other. We are teaching each other all the time, and that in an organization, for example, such as the Forest Service, we are 33,000 employees strong, stretched from where you are in Alaska all the way down to Puerto Rico. And the question I would ask is, are we learning from each other to the maximum, to the level that we could? So also that knowledge is not enough. And so if you talk to educators and you say knowledge is not enough, I guess you're glad you're sitting 3,000 miles away. But what I mean by that is that what also came out of these presentations is that values themselves, and if you'll notice down at the bottom down here in our slide titles, changing forest enduring values is kind of the motto of the climate change program in the Forest Service, that we can have change around us, but there are these values that we bring to our problem solving that are just as important as the content or even the process knowledge itself. And what I heard tonight were some really strong statements about values. The value of balance, the value of recognition and acknowledgement of one another and of accomplishment, respect for connections and respect for time and the learning that goes on in time and for place. And then curiosity and quiet observation as values in and of themselves. We often think of them as activity, but we can't learn unless we have that kind of deep-seated curiosity about what makes things work, and the patience and the skills to actually observe it, and a kind of a respect for that quiet observation versus this hurry-scurry world that I'm about to walk into in just a little bit as I get on the metro with all these other urban refugees. And then the last value, kind of the moral of the morals that make up the stories that we create, is just joy. What I saw in several of these, in every one of these presentations that kind of shone through here, was that people really enjoy what they're doing. They enjoy their engagement, they enjoy learning. It's not drudgery, it's exciting. And we should celebrate that as a value in and of itself. So thank you for a great evening for me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or just have a cup of coffee or a cocktail from me at the dinner, and I'll be thinking about you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing those thoughts with us. We really appreciated you linking up and being available and having the green solution to being part of our presentation. We thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Before folks, do you want to call for questions, or do we have time? Do folks have questions for Dave? Any questions out there? Okay, thank you again. I wanted to let folks know that as part of the elevation of the Tongass National Forest to a children's forest, I was able to purchase packages of materials for educators. There are 50 sets available, and Betsy back in the back and I have a list of all your names. You can sign out packs and take them home, take them to your schools, share them with other educating friends that you are working with. Please do take those with you today as part of the Climate Change Symposium, and I want to thank you again for attending Change at Your Doorstep.
Thank you, Faith, for coordinating that entire session. Before we go over to those awesome resource packets, Paul, would you like to come up and say a few words about citizen science? Paul Alaback is one of our keynote speakers for this entire symposium. He's a professor emeritus at University of Montana, and he's been doing a lot of recent work through Project Budburst. So with that, Paul.
Thank you. This has been a great session. I was just going to say that, you know, there's a great opportunity in citizen science. We can help teach people about the environment through actually participating in science. I think scientists can't study climate change on their own, but having all the eyes and ears of children and adults looking at this environment that are engaged in the environment, we can help us really understand what's going on. So I've been the principal science advisor for this national program called Project Budburst. Right now we have over 11,000 people contributing observations across the country, and it's very simple. It's a matter of observing when do flowers come out in the spring, which of course is a key part of traditional ecological knowledge as well. When leaves come out, keeping track of that, sending it to our database. We've developed a lot of K-12 resources. A lot of teachers are using them in the classroom, and I'd be very anxious to talk to any educators that are interested in doing this kind of thing. I think Brittany can give you information on how to contact me. I would really love to get more participation here in Alaska because, as other people have said, this is such a critical region. The change is occurring so fast. And like here in Juneau, when I lived here, I have some background data that we could compare with new observations that you and your students could be making. So it's kind of a neat opportunity. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about doing this sort of thing. And in general, I think citizen science is something really to think about because it's a wonderful win-win where you can help engage your students in these activities and knowing that they are actually contributing to helping us understand what's going on in the future with climate change and everything else. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome to head back towards Faith and get those resource packets.